Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's your host, CJ, Real Talk News. And I've been off for a minute, taking care of my preps, and I had to take a step back and a break and just observe things that are going on. What I want to talk to you today is the aftermath and the incoming storm that is going to hit the country once again. But the aftermath of the Texas polar vortex and how still people are without power for themselves and families. People are still freezing to death there. And it's not just in Texas, it's in Alabama, Louisiana, and other states in the southern region. But how many of you remember the phrase that was used a few times by President-elect Biden when he was on the debate stage? And it was also used by President Trump a couple times. Dark winter. Now, a lot of people have brought this to the table and shed the light and brought the light to dark winter. Before this tragedy took place, and are still doing so now. If you're not really familiar with that term, you might want to look it up and look up the people who have devoted their time explaining and telling you what it is. It is an operation. An example of the operation being put into play and activated goes far back to the early 2000s of a Tom Clancy video game that was made by Ubisoft. And it shows a futuristic time where technology is at an all-time high. It controls every aspect of the person's life. But they lay out the agenda in the trailer for that game called Dark Winter. Now let's fast forward a few years to the mid-2000s. There was a military operation drill taking place called Dark Winter, and it had to do with a pandemic virus that had gotten out and affected people. And the scenario in that trailer almost lines up 100% to what we're facing now with this pandemic. But there are multiple layers, like an onion, to this dark winter that are in the works of being rolled out. Slowly but surely, you have to peel each layer off until the entire agenda is fully implemented, enforced, and complete. Now, concerning Texas and all the things we've heard the last few days throughout the week concerning what's going on with their power. Biden said it was going to be a cold, dark winter. strangely enough, not even a month goes by during his first few days in office when he signed a slew of executive orders in an attempt to eradicate everything Trump and his administration had done to keep this nation afloat. But one of the executive orders he wrote was a suspension on the power grid oversight for 90 days. Now, if you're not aware of this, but when in the mid to late 2000s, I remember exactly when, I can pull up the article if it's necessary, but China had written the software and sold the software for the power grid to the U.S. government. And on doing so, were the back doors with their full, unbridled, granted access to the Chinese government. Another thing that should be brought to the table here is the Green New Deal. And I'm hoping people still remember what the Green New Deal is and what it pertains to. It's a massive infrastructure overhaul to get states here in the U.S. and fully on board, one way or another, to green energy. Which is a complete sham, useless, worthless form of energy. Because when the storm hit Texas and other southern and mid-southern states, Texas already has wind power, and so there's a few in some of the other states, and they failed. They froze up. So all these people are left in the dark with no power at all. So you got to ask yourself, what's the card in their hand that they're going to play next with these NGO and government institutions? How much more pain and suffering are we, the little people, going to have to endure, suffer, and go through until the breaking point is reached? And that branch on the government tree is broken by the people. Now you've seen the PR stunts by celebrities and politicians calling for fundraisers to raise money. Well, that's not going to do a damn thing, because people don't need the money. They need food, water, clothing, heat sources. And isn't it surprising that days after, when the weather started to clear up just a little bit, the National Guard stepped in and delivered water? Another PR stunt. And also to get the public that are unaware of agendas, comfortable and used to and acclimated to a military presence on the streets. And you hear this rhetoric between power companies and politicians playing the blame game, but not coming up with any kind of solution. Now, some people out there, myself included, have a small feeling that this could have been a blatant attack on the state of Texas, because of the very fact that for a long time, the state of Texas has mentioned one time and over that they want to secede from the United States and become their own independent state. And they have have the means to do so. They have their own energy grid. They have their own economy through various outlets. Oil hubs are down there producing oil. They have the means to make and back their own currency in gold and silver. They're a self-sustaining state. Government doesn't like that. Keep that in mind. Now, if that's some just kind of crazy thought, then so be it. But I'm not alone in that thought. And when I mentioned the Green New Deal in Texas, a part of the Green New Deal is getting rid of coal, oil, and fossil-based fuels and energy-producing sources. Texas' oil hub is overfroze. Their agriculture is pretty much down the toilets. Did you know that Texas, other than California or Florida, are some of the biggest citrus producers in the country? You have that market there. Not only that, beef. They have lost so much cattle due to this storm. So you got to think, what's really going on? Who's to gain in all of this? It's definitely not the people of Texas, definitely not the little guy. Because they have nothing to gain and lost everything and will still have everything to lose. Now, mind you, the ones that are pushing for the Green New Deal the most and was written by the Democrat Party. Keep that in mind. Look up the Green New Deal. Look what they want to accomplish by having that rolled out. And one last thing I might add. If this goes through, the long-term effect is that you might have heard in the off winds every so often that Bill Gates and others want to build smart cities. If this happens, it'll push those people into those high-tech surveillance cities where they're monitored every day, more so than now, like the perfect lab rats. So just some things to think about. I want you to think.